Section 1 of Mythology by Jane Ellen Harrison. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 1. Hermes. We shall begin with the Lesser Olympian, with Hermes. Let us see him first with Homer's eyes. In the Odyssey, Zeus summons Hermes and bids him go to the island of Calypso. He spake, nor did the fleet-foot Shining One fail of obedience, but at once laced on beneath his feet the imperishable fair sandals of gold, that when he would be gone over the wet sea or the boundless land, bore him like blowing wind, and took in hand the rod wherewith he charms men's eyes to sleep, or makes the sleeper to awake and stand. Holding it now, the Shining One with might took wing, and mounting the Pierian height, out of the sky on ocean darted down, and swift across the billows urged his flight. As a sea-eagle that his finny prey chases, his thickest plumage wet with spray, through the dread gulfs of sea unharvested, over the thronging waves he sped his way. Again and again Homer shows us the bright young messenger god. He comes to rescue Odysseus from the fatal house of Circe, and gives him the tragic herb moly to release him from her spells. So saying, from the ship's side and the sea, inland I went alone, and presently up the enchanted glades I drew anigh to the great house of Circe's sorcery. But as I drew anigh it, in that place gold-wanded Hermes met me face to face, in likeness of a youth when the first down fledges his lip in earliest manhood's grace. He utters his warning. So spake the Shining One, and forthwith drew out of the earth that drug, and in my hand laid it, and showed me in what sort it grew. Black was the root, the blossom milky white, and the gods call it moly. Mortal wight would have hard work to dig it from the ground, howbeit the power of gods is infinite. Such is the Hermes we know, the Hermes worshipped by the later Greeks, the Hermes composed by Homer. A goodly icon, a fair image indeed. What were the materials that went into his fashioning? The answer to this question is a surprise, almost a shock. It comes to us from the antiquarian Pausanias, who in the 2nd century A.D. traveled all over Greece and has left us his notebook. Happily, he was a man for whom things ancient, even if uncouth and grotesque, had special charm. At Pherae in Achaia, Pausanias saw an image of Hermes, the market god. It was of square shape, surmounted by a head with a beard. It was of no great size. In front of it was a hearth made of stone with bronze lamps clamped to it with lead. Beside it an oracle is established. He who would consult the oracle comes at evening, burns incense on the hearth, lights the lamps, lays a coin of the country on the altar to the right of the image, and whispers his question into the ear of the god. Then he stops his ears and quits the marketplace, and when he has gone outside a little way, he uncovers his ears, and whatever word he hears, that he takes for an oracle. Hermes was, then, to begin with, what his name might lead us to expect, a herm, a rude pillar later surmounted by a head. But not only Hermes began life as a herm, all the other gods, it would seem, had the like lowly parentage. At Pherae, close to the image of Hermes, Pausanias goes on to tell us, stood about 30 square stones. These the people of Pherae revered, giving to each stone the name of a god. And says Pausanias, in the olden times all the Greeks worshipped unwrought stones instead of images. At Thespiae he elsewhere notes the most ancient image of Eros, the winged love god, was an unwrought stone. At Orchomenus in Boeotia, where was a very ancient sanctuary of the Charites or grace-givers, their images were stones that had fallen from heaven. The use of square-shaped images of Hermes, Pausanias in another part of his journal says, was first introduced by the Athenians, who were zealous in all religious matters, and from Athens the usage passed to the rest of Greece. How dear and how hallowed were these square-shaped Herms was clearly seen by the horror and panic that ran through Athens when at the time of the fatal Sicilian expedition the Hermae were sacrilegiously mutilated. The Arcadians, also a primitive people, were specially fond of the square-shaped herm. At Megalopolis, Pausanias saw images of the gods made in square form and called workers. The contrast between the square herms and the human-shaped Olympians evidently struck him, for he says, "Touching Hermes, the poems of Homer have given currency to the report that he is the servant of Zeus and leads down to hell the souls of the departed." We have seen Hermes in Homer as the messenger from heaven to earth. Let us now see him as conductor of souls to Hades. The wooers in the halls of Odysseus are slain. Hermes comes to lead their souls to Hades. Now Cyllenian Hermes called forth from the halls the souls of the wooers, and he held in his hand his wand that is fair and golden, wherewith he lulls the eyes of men, of whomso he will, while others again he even wakens out of sleep. Herewith he roused and led the souls who followed gibbering, and even as bats flit gibbering into the secret place of a wondrous cave, when one has fallen out of the rock from the cluster, and they cling each to each up aloft, even so the souls gibbered as they fared together, and Hermes, the helper, led them down the dank ways. Hermes is a square post. Hermes is a winged messenger. No contrast, it would seem, could be more complete, no functions more incompatible. The whole gist of the herm is to remain steadfast. The characteristic of the messenger is swift motion. The herm's modern brother, the pillar box, would be quite useless but for the aid of half a dozen postmen. The Greeks themselves felt the anomaly, the incompatibility of the two figures. It must have tried the faith of many a simple worshipper. Babrius, writing in the 2nd or 3rd century A.D., in one of his fables makes the god himself voice the dilemma. Was he a tombstone? Was he an immortal? A stonemason made a marble herm for sale, and men came up to bid. One wanted it for a tombstone, since his son was lately dead. A craftsman wanted to set it up as a god. It was late, and the stonemason had not sold it yet. So he said, "Come early tomorrow, and look at it again." He went to sleep, and lo, in the gateway of dreams, Hermes stood and said, "My affairs now hang in the balance. Do make me one thing or another, dead man or god." What then is the link that binds together herm and winged messenger? How, in a word, did the Hermes of Homer come to be composed out of the square-shaped boundary stone? Within the limits of Greece, I might have asked the question and never found an answer. Happily, the comparative method is at hand to help, and it is Russia this time that brings the solution. The burial rite of the Eastern Slavs is thus described in an ancient chronicle. After a sort of wake had been held over the dead man, the body was burnt, and the ashes, gathered together in a small urn, were set up on a pillar or herm where the boundaries of two properties met. The dead grandfather was the object of special reverence under the title of chur, which means in Russian either grandfather or boundary. In the Russian of today, prashchur means great-great-grandfather, and churmenya means may my grandfather preserve me. On the other hand, the offense of removing a legal landmark is expressed by the word cherishchur, which means beyond the limit, or beyond my grandfather. The grandfather looked after the patriarchal family during his life. He safeguarded its boundaries in death. His monument was at once tombstone and herm. Light begins to dawn. Hermes is at first just a herm, a stone or pillar set up to commemorate the dead. Into that pillar the mourner outpours, projects all his sorrow for the dead protector, all his passionate hope that the ghost will protect him still. When in the autumn he sows his seed, he buries it in the ground as he buried his dead father or grandfather, and he believes that the dead man takes care of it, fosters it in the underworld, and sends it up to blossom in spring and to fruit in autumn. So the herm became the guardian of his buried wealth, and Hermes is charidotes, giver of grace or increase of all good luck. And more than this, in his lifetime, a man went to his father or his grandfathers, to his elders, for advice. Surely they will not fail him now. So at night he steals to the herm and asks his question. The herm is dumb, but the first chance word the man hears comes to him as an oracle from the dead. The dead are always magical. They can prevail where the living fail. So on the Herm he figures the Rabdos, which is not a messenger's staff, not a king's scepter, but simply a magician's wand. And about it he coils snakes, for he has seen a snake coiling about the tomb, creeping out of it, and a snake is the symbol of the dead man. If the worshipper is an agriculturalist, his desire will be for his seeds, and the Herm will be the guardian of his crops. But if he be a shepherd, not less will he look to his dead ancestor to be the guardian of his sheep, to make them be fruitful and multiply. So when the Herm gets ahead, and gradually becomes wholly humanized, among a pastoral people he carries on his shoulders a ram, and from the ram carrier, the Kriophoros, Christianity has taken her good shepherd. But it is not only the seeds and the flocks that the dead ancestor must watch over. More important still, he is guardian of the young men, the children of his clan. He is child-rearer, Kurotrophos. And finally, when he is translated to Olympus, he still watches over the infant gods, and Praxiteles so fashions his image, Hermes carrying the child Dionysus. How exactly the leap to Olympus was accomplished we do not know. At some time in Greek prehistory, owing to the movements of peoples, and certainly before Homer, the Greek gods were assembled on the high peak of Mount Olympus in Thessaly, a peak that I have only seen shrouded in clouds. From the mountain peak to the sky, transition was easy and natural. The old boundary god, the steadfast Herm, had been the medium of communication with the ghosts below. It was natural he should be the messenger of the gods above, only he must shift his shape. His feet, once rooted in the ground, are freed and fitted with winged sandals. His magician's staff with its snakes he keeps, only now it has become a herald's staff, and he himself has shed his age and is a young man with the first down upon his cheek. It is as the messenger that modern art and literature remember Hermes, the messenger and herald, new lighted on a heaven-kissing hill. End of section 1.